So in today's video, we're going to continue to deepen to understand some of the effects of trauma and what we can do about it, and particularly from childhood trauma. So where I want to begin today is with the idea of defensive adaptations. So what is that? Defensive adaptations is something that we do as we're trying to survive in an environment. Now let me give you an example. Let's say someone's growing up in an environment that isn't safe. So maybe frequently there's some physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, maybe just anger. Very frequently they always are on their toes. It's like they're always on eggshells in their home as a child growing up because someone might lash out at them, someone might very intensely criticize them, someone might physically hurt them. So in order to survive that, they might develop a hypervigilance. Hypervigilance means you're being hyper aware of your surroundings and not really feeling at ease and at peace. So you're burning all this extra energy being hyper aware. Now, if you think about it, that hypervigilance was necessary for this child when they were growing up because they weren't in a safe environment. But it can be so challenging now as an adult. Maybe this person now is in a safe environment. Maybe they met a partner that now is safe. But it's so hard for them to drop that hypervigilance, and then they maybe now have trouble sleeping. Maybe they have high anxiety. Maybe just their whole body's worn out from that. So how do you work with that adaptive defensive strategy? Before we get into that, let me give you another example. Maybe you have a child that, as all children are, when it was born, its heart was open, it was trusting, but then that trust got abused. They weren't made to feel safe from those that were supposed to make them safe. So now as an adult, they have trouble being able to trust, or trouble being able to be vulnerable, or trouble to be able to drop their guard and, be able to receive or give love, because they were wounded in that way and they had this adaptive adaptation, this defensive adaptation from that. So again, it's so important to stress that when they went through it, that was necessary to do so they don't keep getting hurt. But what do you do now as an adult when maybe your circumstances have changed and you're trying to figure out how to move on? So the first step, which is the beginning step, is maybe become aware of black and white thinking. So what if you realize that your mind is having the thought that no one is safe and no one can be trusted? And then see what would it be like to challenge that thought a little bit and say, what if we introduced instead a more gray kind of thinking, like some people aren't trustworthy, but some people are trustworthy and some people are safe. So see in some of these adaptations if it has led to black and white thinking, or saying, it's never okay to drop my guard. I always have to be aware because this shoe might drop. And ask yourself, maybe there are instances where it would be appropriate to drop your guard. So sort of challenging that thinking pattern, that's a great first step. A second step, as we go a little deeper, is really starting to do some inner child work. And that's starting to get in touch with that part of you that was so scared or felt so unsafe or so betrayed. That part of you that had to make these conclusions about life to defend itself. And see if you can take time to sort of connect to it, and most of all, validate it. Almost imagine this scared, wounded, and child that isn't being treated correctly and is being abused in some way. And imagine if you can hold it. Imagine if you could tell it, wow, I understand what you went through. I understand why you would react this way, to always be hypervigilant or never trust anyone. And see if you can really work on compassion and understanding for it, and showing that even though now it may be acting sort of irrationally, that it's really coming from an understandable place. The more you can connect to that part of you and give yourself and this younger part of you, a sense of understanding and acceptance, that will help it to soften. And lastly, in this video, the third suggestion would be, Once you've done the second step and really have connected to it, you can introduce some sort of negotiation, like saying something like, I get why you needed to be hypervigilant, and it makes sense. But what if we tried, maybe just for a few hours, as I'm at the park today, if we're able to drop our guard and, just be a little more in the moment, and see if you could somehow dialogue with that unconscious part of you. And this obviously can happen in therapy. This is just giving you an idea of what can happen. Or you can sort of speak to that part and say, I understand you need to be really on guard, but what if we let a different part in, a more carefree part for a little bit? Would that be okay? So starting to work with it in a respectful manner, but allowing it to loosen its hold is a great way to help move forward. Okay, I'm so excited to continue sharing with you even more tips and amazing things on healing childhood trauma, particularly working with the body and nervous system. And some of those will come in the next videos. All the best.